Start hour number 2 with some recruiting talk. Sam Spiegelman covers it all for Rivals. Joins us now on Jim's Firearms Hotline. Sam, appreciate some time. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. Been a slow, very uninteresting morning on my end. So I, just hanging in there.
Why do I sense the sarcasm? My meter's dinging a little bit here. You broke the news of Blaine Bradford, the Catholic High Baton Rouge safety, committing to Ohio State. When you got that news, were you surprised?
Partially. I'd say, of his 3 finalists, the odds were that he was going to land either at LSU or Ohio State. Texas was a bit of a wild card in there. Obviously they had recruited him for a long time. That was before a complete overhaul of the defensive staff, with Blake Gideon going to Georgia Tech to be their defensive coordinator. And of course, obviously Coach Joseph now with the New Orleans Saints. So that was a surprise, but Ohio State has been right at or near the top with Blaine probably since last November when he was in the Horseshoe for the first time for a game. We know he worked out at Ohio State and wowed the staff and, Matt Guerrieri, their young safeties coach, and Ryan Day last year. But when he was in that game environment, I think the Buckeyes lost that game. But the family, mom, dad, Blaine, I think they've never seen anything like that. And that doesn't happen all the time with kids from Louisiana. Sometimes just the Midwest, the Ohio States, the Michigans of the world, it just doesn't do it for them. They've seen something else and then they love it. But, Blaine gravitated toward it. He felt very comfortable up there. He's the kind of kid that's not afraid to be different. And I think that he was comfortable if he was going to leave the state to go somewhere with a track record, not only for producing NFL talent like Ohio State does. They obviously have the number 1 safety in the country, and Caleb Downs as a great recruiting tool. But a team that's coming off a national championship and a pretty convincing, run in the playoffs, that they're kind of a team that, in this playoff era, you can kind of count on them to be in the playoffs year in and year out. And I think that kind of fits what happens when you play for Catholic High, and they have a similar mantra over there.
Yeah, no question. LSU's done an awesome job of recruiting Catholic High. Generally speaking, when there's been a really good player there on Hearthstone, LSU has found a way to come up with him. Doesn't appear that's going to be the case with Bradford. What do you feel like the next few months hold for him? Do you think that he'll visit LSU being right down the road? Do you think LSU's still in it? What's your sense tell you?
Yeah, I think he'll still officially visit LSU. Maybe he won't do it in June. He is scheduled to be there in June. But I don't think if Blaine is going to change his mind, I don't think it's going to be in June. He's going to be back in Columbus for his official visit as well. He's also, if he's going to change his mind, I think it's going to be as he gets nearer to the finish line. LSU's not going to go anywhere. They're going to keep recruiting Blaine, and Corey Reeman and Jake Olson, are going to recruit some other safeties. That's the way it is at LSU. If you don't want to be in the boat now as we put the pressure on you, they're going to find someone else who's really, really good. By the way, they have Aiden Hall, the number 3 safety in the country, already committed. They're in a great spot with Jaira Edwards out of St. Francis, who, despite being from Maryland, has shown interest in Georgia and LSU and A&M. The Tigers offered Laziah Jackson out of South Georgia, a long, rangy safety right from that part of the country. They obviously got Dylan Purter to commit alongside Aiden Hall recently. Dylan Purter has had one of the best off seasons of any defensive back in the 2026 cycle, and made an early commitment to the Tigers. And they're going to continue to recruit Blaine. His brother is a freshman in the secondary there. His relationships are, if they're not as close as Ryan Day and Matt Gary, they're second. And it's obviously, it's no question that the family being in Baton Rouge is going to feel the pressure to get to Tiger Stadium and dot all the I's and check all the T's, or whatever the expression is, before they sign on. But before it's all said and done, to make sure they're making the right decision. His older brother, Jacob, was committed to Houston before he ended up committing and feeling great about, signing with LSU. The process works differently for everyone. What he loves in March 31st, he may not love on June 30th or potentially November 30th. These things are fluid. Ohio State is hard to knock off, but I think, given the proximity and given the connections over there at LSU, they're going to be there until they know that they can.
What kind of player is Bradford?
He's incredible. He's a 5-star for us at Rivals. He's our number one safety in the country. I'll be perfectly honest. I remember scouting him as a sophomore, some of the best sophomore film you'll find. And, he was someone who looked like he could grow into being just an incredibly uber athletic middle linebacker or off-ball linebacker. He is so physical. But, after a full healthy junior season, by the way, after a ton of injuries early on in that sophomore season, he came back and had a pick six in the state championship game for Catholic and reminded everyone that when he's healthy, he is a baller. And he did that again last year. Like I said, super physical, but he's a sure tackler. He covers a ton of ground on the back end. So you talk about what he can do as a run defender at the safety position. He can line up at different spots, give you a lot of versatility on the back end. And we talk about his coverage. I posted a video I had from LSU's Friday Night Lights earlier. I mean, listen, I know that you got a lot of LSU fans, but he picked off Bryce Underwood and batted away another pass during LSU's Elite 7-on-7 competition in front of Jake Olsen and Blake Baker last year. So you know why he was at the top of their board. He just has great instincts, great physicality, and just great, innate ball playing skills. When that ball's in the air, it might as well just be Blaine's. He sees it and he attacks it, which is what you want from a talented safety like that.
Chatting with Sam Spiegelman, covers recruiting for Rivals. Broke the news earlier today that Blaine Bradford committing to Ohio State from right here in Baton Rouge. He's part of a huge in-state crop here in the 2026 class that's about to finish their junior school year and then head into their senior years coming up in the fall. How do you think LSU stands with the rest of the top of this class? You mentioned Dayton Hall a little bit earlier. They've got a lot of commitments from the top. Do you feel like they're going to finish strong in the state? That's generally been one of the most important things for LSU in terms of the program.
Yeah, LSU is at its best, and they're competing for SEC and national championships when they're recruiting their home state well. Mind you, again, for the topic of Blaine Bradford, Dominic McKinley was committed to Texas A&M. Gabe Relaford was committed to Texas A&M, during these months last year. So things are fluid, or 2 years ago at that point. But besides Aiden Hall, who, like I said, number 3 or 4 safety in the country, depending on where you look, Big Rich Anderson out of Carr, his teammate, the number 1 or number 2 defensive lineman in the country from no matter where you look. Other in-state pieces like Jabari Mack just coming off the board, Kenny Darby, who led Louisiana in receiving as a junior last year at Airline, Ja'Kai Anderson out of McDonough 35, one of the shakiest, most electric slot receivers, special team stars in the New Orleans area, and not to mention a 5-star commitment from Tristan Keys out of state, but of course you'd rather play from ahead than the converse. This is a great foundation for LSU, and I think they got the top quarterback on their board is Bo Bentley. They're battling Oklahoma largely, as well as Georgia for Bo. That'll be a tough battle for Joe Sloan and Co to win, but they made a really big move with the touted quarterback. This has the potential to be a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 class in the country because Louisiana, this is as good of a class as in-state that they've had in some time. It's not only really rich at the top, but it's really, really deep. We're talking 12 or 13, blue chippers deep in Louisiana. It kind of reminds me about 10 years ago, that 2016 class with Christian Fulton and company. And LSU was able to reel in most of those guys, and you know what happened with a lot of those guys down the road with them on the roster. Blaine Bradford to Ohio State, like I mentioned, this is a recruitment that's going to be fluid until the end, and it does suck for LSU to have to play from behind, but I think they got a puncher's chance with a kid who's got a brother on the roster and who's from that hometown and has great relationships with the staff. I think that they're in a dogfight with Texas A&M over Lamar Brown. Who's going to head back to College Station this weekend for the second time in 3 weeks. That battle is probably too tight to call at the moment, but, that's another wrinkle that LSU has to kind of figure out on the offensive or defensive line. But the way that they're recruiting, if they are able to get those guys on board or one of the two, along with, this they're already in a great spot with so many other kids in state or hold commitments already, which is pretty unbelievable when you look at some of these guys like Big Rich Anderson and Jabari Mack in the top, 50, 60 in the country. they got a shot. And, this thing can turn really well, especially as they start going with some of these national targets. They got 5-star edge Tank Jones on their board, 4-star offensive lineman Darius Gray, one of the best interior guys in the country, really picking up steam with him. This could go really well for LSU. And if really, like you said, they're able to turn the envelope in-state and keep those guys in first, everything else is lagniappe, and they're going to be in the mix for potentially a number 1 class this year.
Good to know. If you're looking for your recruiting coverage, Sam Spiegelman's got you covered over there at Rivals. He's a national recruiting analyst for the folks over there. We appreciate a little bit of time here on this Monday. Get back to work, all right?
Yeah, appreciate you, Hon. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Spiegelman from Rivals. As always, this has always been my contention on recruiting. If you're a local Louisiana prospect, I think it's absolutely vital that you stay home and go to LSU. If you're a national prospect and you'd like to check out Louisiana, I think that's a great idea. That's, generally speaking, been my my approach to recruiting. Does that seem fair to you, Beck?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go wherever you want to college. I just hope the good players go to LSU. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.